Welcome again to Breakfast with Bob, Laguna Phuket edition. We again are in beautiful Laguna Phuket, and that was Sao and Hua on the Kim and the Ching into the Thai music. My next guest, long time buddy, have not seen you for, God, is it 20 years? I have no idea. David Voth joins me, former president of the Ironman.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
That's true. Those are the old heady days. But,
Exactly.
We're to some really incredible, exciting times now.
Absolutely. So, David, I mean, in a 15, 20-minute interview, so I say, hey, so what have you been up to for the last 20 years? But I'd hear every once in a while, after you left Ironman, you're involved with rugby, I think. You're involved with the National Association in the U.S., something like that.
Helping them.
And then what next? How did you end up? Are you living over here now?
I am. 20 years.
Yeah.
Do we have time?
Yeah. Cliff notes. Basically.
I've been based, even since the early Ironman days, based in Asia. So have lived in and around Japan.
Yeah.
Traveled back and forth. Started a consulting group that helped Western-based companies make inroads into Asia through special events or sporting events or television content, things like that. So long story short, I have been here for a while, and I do live here.
Yeah.
I live now in the Philippines, and was living in Singapore just the past 4 years.
Right.
Although always kept a house in the Philippines. I've been there for on and off for about 10 years. But it's been a journey.
And
an interesting journey.
What's your involvement with Challenge?
You know what? I'm blessed to be the licensee for Philippines.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting twist of sorts. You know, in the early days of the guys in Kona.
Yeah.
I was part of the licensing group that helped us license an event in Germany, in Europe.
Exactly.
And as the world or the worm turns, I am now their licensee. So that my licensee in Germany, which was an Ironman licensee, became
Roth. Yeah.
Became Roth.
Yes.
And then
a Challenge Roth.
Roth, and then now I'm their licensee. So the roles have reversed.
That is so funny.
But it's good stuff.
So back in the late '80s.
Yep.
When Valerie Silk owned the Ironman.
Yep.
Take me through the steps to that becoming the World Triathlon Corporation.
It's an interesting saga of sorts. Valerie, she's in my eyes, she's still the queen of triathlon. Yeah. And I love her to death. She was a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
I had been a competitor in Ironman, I guess, in 86, 87, 88, 89, and then on through the years. So I got to know her. And long story short, asked her at one point, in those interesting days of coming off the high of finishing the race, if you ever want to look for a partner, or if you ever look to exit, I'm your guy.
Right.
And of course, I had no money at the time.
Right.
So
of course not. So you had to go find a little bit.
Go find the money. So we talked. We actually began talking in as early as 1987. 87. Yeah. And then into 88, we thought we had a deal. We didn't. Okay. But she surprised me with the phone call in 89 and said, "Dave, what do you think? Can we put this together?" Wow. So I was absolutely incredibly excited about it because the vision of what this global property could be. And those are the days when we were all kind of just trying to find, winging it, trying to find a place to establish something that we love so dear. And so what is an interesting thought, but what has driven, I believe, the success of Challenge is actually in those early days of what we wanted to do with Ironman. It's always connection to community.
Right.
We at Challenge look to serve the athlete. Mm-hmm. In fact, they're the most important part of this.
Always have been, yeah.
And so with that, the importance of their participation means their family and their friends and their supporters, their sponsors, whoever they may be.
Right.
But we holistically look at a way to actually involve everybody. So it's not necessarily a drop off of what the vision was back then to what it is now.
Right.
The fact is that we actually have a very unique opportunity to spread the Challenge brand across the world now.
So how, as a guy who basically was not, I'm assuming, not, you were on the periphery of triathlon for the last 15 years, or were you?
You know what? I obviously stayed involved from the periphery.
Right.
I helped launch, in fact, with some of our mutual friends in San Diego, we launched a project called the NFL Quarterback Challenge.
Oh, yes, sure.
And so
with Jim Curl and Carl Thomas back in the day, yes.
Yeah, so we launched the NFL Quarterback Challenge a couple years after that, and that had a 14, 15-year run on NBC.
Yes.
And finally on CBS. So it was one of the greatest sports anthology shows of its time, and where we tested the skills of NFL quarterbacks. Always in Hawaii, though.
Yeah.
We had to have a nice place to be.
Absolutely.
So without breaking stride, I created with another group the NBA Who's Got Game, which is a Christmas Day special on NBC, and we held a basketball skills contest, much like Quarterback Challenge.
Right.
But we did that in Hawaii. We sold that to the NBA. So, and after that, got involved with certainly following the sport, as you said, from the periphery, but involved with developing other sports and other properties around the world.
How is it coming back into the sport now and launching an event in Philippines? What have you seen in terms of the difference between the sport then and the sport now? Or is it?
I'm not so sure. I think there actually is there's some things that are remarkably different. I think that the skill sets, and this is not a put down to my brothers of the old days or sisters of the old days, but the guys and the girls who are participating in these events today are incredibly gifted athletes. Number one, and so the specificity of exercise and how they train and what they put into it. I think the times have continually dropped. Things that we will look back in those days as being never achievable are now commonplace, and so you have people who are fifth or sixth in the podium, knocking down times that would have won the events, years before. Then I find things have never changed. So there's a lot that about the sport that I think still has huge potential. I think global media platforms for the sport is really needed. I think that we need mainstream sponsors to actually come in and support in big ways. It's very easy always to find endemic sponsors, people who are a bike company or a whatever,
swimming, running. If someone's involved, they need to be involved.
It's a natural that they come in. But we have to, as an industry, and this is not just Challenge. This is across the board.
Right.
But people in the endurance industry need to really stretch out and tap some of the relationships that they have and prove to people that the platform of endurance sports is actually a very viable, very affordable, very targeted, very important market to associate with. So big rewards. So I think there's huge potential down the line.
Talk a little bit about your Challenge Philippines. When's it coming up? And
February 22nd.
Okay. And the distances?
So, half distance.
Okay, it's a half.
Half distance. So
nice.
Will
this be a first?
It is number one first race in Philippines.
And how's right now with the tragedy that just was in the Philippines? How are people responding?
I think the Pinoy spirit is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So it's, if you look at why, because there was choices and opportunities to look at other places around the world. And my wife is Filipina. I have two beautiful sons. We live in the Philippines. So for me, it was a natural. But what brought me to the point of saying that there's such a great synergistic match between Challenge and the Philippines is that the spirit behind the Pinoy people, the Philippine people, is so strong. And it's a never say die attitude, and it was a tragedy what took place and what happened, and certainly the people of the Philippines are incredibly thankful. Well, they're resilient, but they're also grateful that they have so many friends around the world who have helped.
People have reached out.
Yeah, so that's it really does show that we have a global family.
We really do.
Yeah. So.
Well, it's great to have you back in the sport, man. It's
good stuff.
It's
and in February we're gonna have a good time. It's the race is beautiful. It's the water we swim in a absolutely clear, gorgeous, pristine water.
Yeah.
They swim over reefs, and so my thought was in the beginning, actually the swim is too pretty. It's
it's gonna be distracting.
It's distracting from people, and the bike goes along the coastline. It is challenging, which is apropos for why we have Challenge Philippines. But it's a bit hilly, but it's but nothing that anybody who trains can't handle. And the run is absolutely divine. And I say that because in the old days of Subic in Bataan, which is where we host the race, was an old military place. So they would, in bad end of things, there were bombs. Right. So people would put bombs in bunkers, and they housed these bunkers in the forest, and had nice paved roads in between these bunkers. Well, 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later, this trail through the forest allows us to actually run in triple canopy forests and beautiful rainforests with monkeys chattering all around. So I
love that.
And the pavement is smooth and clean and clear. So it's going to be a great race, fast.
I love that.
So
Well, it's great to have you back in the sport.
Thanks,
great
buddy.
to connect again.
Thanks.
It's been way too long.
Yeah, thank you very much.
David Voth has been our guest. This is Breakfast with Bob, Laguna Phuket edition. Hold on, everyone. We will be right back.